always believed that family was everything, that no matter how messed up things got, your family would be there for you, and you'd be there for them. That belief was tattooed into my brain by my dad, who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on our table and still had time to throw the ball with me and my younger brother, Matt, in the backyard every Sunday afternoon. Matt and I were close growing up. He was the reckless one, skateboarding off the roof, getting into fights at school, dating 3 girls at once in high school like it was some kind of competition. I was the opposite, straight A student, football captain, the guy who stayed behind after class to help the teacher clean up. But no matter how different we were, I always had his back. He was my brother. What else could I do? So, when Matt's marriage fell apart 2 years ago, I didn't hesitate. He called me at midnight, drunk, crying and broken. His wife had cheated, twice apparently, and then filed for divorce like she was taking out the trash. I told him to come stay with us for a while. Us, meaning me and my wife, Emily. We'd been married for 4 years by then. Solid, stable, or so I thought. Emily wasn't thrilled about Matt crashing in our guest room, especially not long-term. She'd always thought he was immature and a bit of a moocher. But she agreed. For me. That's what she said, anyway. "He's your brother. He needs you," she sighed. "Let's just hope he doesn't drink all the whiskey." At first, it was fine. Matt was a wreck, sure, but he cleaned up after himself, helped out around the house, and even cooked a few times. I actually thought it was good for him, like he was getting his act together. And Emily, well, she warmed up to him. That surprised me. They never really clicked before, but now they'd joke during dinner, laugh at the same shows, even go grocery shopping together when I was at work. I told myself it was a good thing. Maybe they were finally bonding. Maybe having Matt around was bringing us closer as a family. Looking back, I feel like an idiot. I should have seen the signs, the long glances, the private jokes I wasn't in on. The way she started dressing differently when he was around, more makeup, tighter clothes, like she was trying to impress someone. But I chalked it up to her just trying to feel good again. She'd been in a slump, and maybe Matt's presence was just shaking things up a bit. I didn't know it yet, but the man I had taken into my home, the brother I loved like my own blood, was slowly pulling the ground out from under me. And my wife, she was helping him do it. With a smile. Emily had always been a little distant with Matt. She tolerated him, sure, but that was about it. Before he moved in, she used to roll her eyes when I brought him up. She didn't like his jokes, didn't trust his choices, and definitely didn't enjoy how he always seemed to show up when he needed something. That's what made the change feel off. It started small. I'd come home from work and find them in the kitchen, laughing over something I missed. Just normal banter, I thought, nothing weird. But then it became more frequent. Too frequent. I'd walk in and they'd suddenly stop talking, like someone hit mute on the conversation. Emily would change the subject so fast it gave me whiplash. Still, I brushed it off. I told myself I was being paranoid. One night, about 3 weeks after Matt moved in, I came home later than usual. A work dinner ran long. I stepped through the door and immediately noticed the silence. No TV, no clinking of dishes, no music from the Bluetooth speaker Emily always had playing while she cooked. The house was dead quiet. I found them sitting at the kitchen table. Just the 2 of them. Candles were lit, wine glasses in front of both. Matt looked up at me like nothing was strange. Emily smiled and said, "We saved you a plate." Like that made everything okay. I remember laughing awkwardly, brushing it off as something innocent. "Date night without me?" I joked. Emily rolled her eyes. "Matt made dinner. I didn't want to be rude." But something inside me shifted that night. I couldn't put my finger on it, but my gut knew something wasn't right. Over the next few weeks, things kept adding up. I'd find Matt's hoodie on the back of the couch, and Emily would casually mention she'd been cold and borrowed it. She started staying up later than usual, claiming she couldn't sleep, and I'd wake up and find her and Matt watching a movie in the living room, lights off, blanket over both of them. And then there was her phone. Emily had never been secretive with her phone, but now the screen always faced down. She set a new passcode. I asked her why, and she shrugged. "Privacy matters," she said, sipping her coffee like it was nothing. I wanted to believe I was imagining things. I wanted to trust my wife. And my brother? I didn't even question him. Not yet. I told myself they were bonding, that maybe, just maybe, Emily was trying harder for my sake, that this was what rebuilding family looked like. But it didn't feel like family. It felt like a setup. I didn't know it yet. But I wasn't just sharing my home. I was sharing my marriage. And the people I trusted most were already halfway into tearing it apart. I wasn't a jealous guy. Never had been. I believed that trust was the foundation of any relationship, and that insecurity did more damage than honesty ever could. So even when things started to feel off between Emily and Matt, I kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because that's what you do, right? You don't accuse your wife and your brother of something as disgusting as betrayal just because your gut feels weird. You don't let suspicion poison your home. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Still, the small things piled up. One morning, I went to grab my keys from the kitchen counter and noticed Matt's phone vibrating. He'd left it out while taking a shower. Normally, I wouldn't even look at someone else's phone, but something about the way it buzzed 3 times in a row, then stopped, caught my attention. It was a text. I didn't see the message, just the name Emily. I froze. Emily had never used an emoji next to her name in anyone's phone, not even mine. It was such a stupid little detail, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I wanted to open the message just to see, just to make sure I wasn't crazy, but I didn't. I put the phone down and told myself it was probably a joke between them. Maybe they were teasing me, setting up a surprise. Who knows? It wasn't proof of anything. Later that night, I asked Emily casually if she and Matt had been texting much. She blinked. What? No, not really. Just stuff like grocery lists and dinner plans. Why? I smiled, lied, said I was just curious. She smiled back and changed the subject, and just like that, another red flag was folded and stuffed into the drawer of denial in my brain. Then came the business trip. I had to fly out to Dallas for 3 days to meet with a client. Emily couldn't come. She had work. And Matt, well, he was staying back to watch the house, he said. I didn't love the idea of leaving the two of them alone, but what choice did I have? I wasn't going to cancel a major meeting because of some unspoken discomfort I couldn't even name. I kissed Emily goodbye at the airport. She held me a little longer than usual. Looking back, I don't think it was affection. I think it was guilt. The trip was short. Meetings, hotel food, late nights staring at the ceiling, wondering why my chest felt so tight when I thought about home. When I came back, something had shifted. Emily acted normal. Too normal. She greeted me with a big smile, a homemade dinner, a long hug. But there was this emptiness in her eyes, like something had been drained out of her. Matt barely looked at me. I told myself they were just tired, that everything was fine. But deep down, I felt it. Something happened while I was gone. I just didn't know what yet. The first thing that struck me after coming back from Dallas wasn't anything they said. It was the smell. Our bedroom had always smelled like Emily's vanilla candles and fresh laundry. But that night, as I unpacked my suitcase and dropped into bed, something was off. There was a different scent in the room, faint, almost unnoticeable, but definitely there. Muskier. Foreign. Emily was already curled up on her side, pretending to scroll through her phone. I asked her if she'd changed laundry detergent or something. She shrugged. Maybe I used a different candle. You know how smells linger. It was a flimsy excuse. The candles on the dresser hadn't moved since I left. Still, I said nothing. The next day, I found a beer bottle under the bed. I don't drink beer, especially not that brand. Emily doesn't touch the stuff either, but Matt, he practically bathes in it. I held the bottle in my hand for a long minute before tossing it into the trash. No confrontation, no accusation, just quiet panic bubbling in my chest. Why would Matt be drinking in our bedroom? Unless... No. I stopped myself. That was too far. That was paranoid. That was the kind of toxic thinking that ruins marriages, brothers, families. But the doubts were louder now, harder to ignore. Matt avoided me more than usual. He used to hang out in the living room, game with me, vent about his divorce. Now he spent most of his time in the garage or out on the porch, glued to his phone. When I walked into a room, conversations ended. When I left, I could hear muffled laughter behind my back. And Emily? She became colder. Not rude exactly, just distant, mechanical. Her kisses were quick. Her hugs felt like formalities. At night, she said she was tired and rolled away from me. I'd stare at the ceiling, listening to her breathing, wondering who she was dreaming about. One afternoon, I came home early from work. The house was quiet, too quiet. My heart was already racing as I crept down the hall. Emily's car was in the driveway. So was Matt's. I pushed open the bedroom door. No one was there. Everything looked normal. But the bed was freshly made, tighter than she ever made it. A folded hoodie, Matt's, sat on the chair in the corner. A small red mark was on the pillowcase. Lipstick, maybe. Blood? I didn't know. I didn't want to. I backed out of the room like I'd stumbled into a crime scene. Still no proof. Just whispers in my brain. Just shadows that wouldn't stand still. That night I sat in the kitchen and stared at my wedding photo on the wall. The frame tilted slightly to the right. I fixed it, then watched it tilt again minutes later, like the universe itself was trying to tell me something was off. And it was. The truth was in my house, and it was getting bolder. I became obsessed with patterns. Every time Emily laughed at something Matt said, I logged it in my brain. Every time I saw their phones face down on the table at the same time, I noticed. When they suddenly had inside jokes I didn't get, I cataloged the moment like a detective gathering evidence in a case I didn't want to believe was real. But the worst part? I still loved them. Both of them. I loved Emily like she was part of my soul, my calm, my balance, my partner. And Matt, he was my brother. We shared bunk beds as kids. We survived our parents' fights together. He was the only person who knew everything I'd been through in life, and the one person I'd never expect a knife from. But the knife was there. I could feel its handle pressing between my shoulder blades every time they smiled at each other. I wasn't ready to confront either of them. Not yet. I still didn't have anything solid. Just feelings, tension, glimpses of something dark beyond their eyes. And you can't accuse people you love based on vibes alone, no matter how loud they scream in your gut. So I started doing what I never thought I'd do. I snooped. I told myself it was just to clear my head, that if I didn't find anything, I could finally let go of the paranoia, save my marriage, keep what was left of my family intact. First, I checked Emily's laptop. Nothing obvious, just emails, Pinterest boards, work stuff. But when I went through the browser history, I found something strange. Several deleted entries, a few searches about emotional infidelity, and signs your spouse is cheating with someone close. Not mine. I hadn't used her laptop, which meant she had. Was she projecting? Or was she feeling guilty? Then I checked Matt's backpack. Hidden in the side pouch was a hotel key card, one of those generic plastic ones, no branding. I flipped it in my hand for minutes, my pulse thudding in my ears. There was no reason for him to have that. None. I snapped a photo of it, just in case. But the real crack came later that week. Matt went out one night, said he was meeting a buddy from the gym. Emily said she had a headache and was going to bed early. I kissed her on the forehead, told her I'd stay up and watch a game. She mumbled something and disappeared down the hallway. 10 minutes later, I passed by the bedroom and saw the light still on. Heard a voice, then another. I stopped. I pressed my ear to the door. 2 voices, whispering. Then a soft laugh. My stomach twisted. I couldn't make out words, but I knew what I was hearing. Matt hadn't left. He was in there, with her. I backed away, careful not to make a sound. I didn't want to barge in. Not yet. I needed more. I needed truth. Not suspicion, not noise. Truth. So I made a decision I never thought I'd make. The next day, I bought a hidden camera. If I was going to burn, I needed to see who struck the match. Buying the camera made me feel like a traitor in my own home. The whole way back from the electronics store, I kept questioning myself. Was I really going to do this? Spy on my wife? On my own brother? But the truth was, I wasn't doing it out of vengeance. I wasn't even angry yet. I just needed clarity. I needed to stop gaslighting myself with doubt. The unease was eating me alive, day by day, thought by thought. So I did it. It was small, unnoticeable, just a basic hidden camera disguised as a smoke detector. I installed it on the ceiling in the corner of our bedroom while Emily was out grocery shopping, hands shaking the whole time. I didn't want to catch anything. That's the honest part nobody tells you when you're in this situation. You don't want to be right. You want the camera to prove you're crazy. You want it to show a faithful wife, a respectful brother, a peaceful home. I hoped, prayed that I'd feel stupid afterward, but deep down, I already knew I wouldn't. I didn't tell anyone, not a soul. I set it to record automatically whenever there was motion between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Then I waited. That night, I slept on the couch, said I had work emails and didn't want to wake her with the light. She didn't argue, didn't even look concerned, just said, okay, and closed the bedroom door behind her. Matt came home late again, claimed he went out with friends, walked past me with a grin and a half-sincere, hey, man, like everything was totally normal. I didn't respond, just stared at the TV, volume off, heart hammering like a war drum. The next morning, I waited until Emily left for work. I made sure Matt was still asleep. Then I retrieved the footage. I didn't even have to watch the whole night. Just 43 minutes into the clip, I saw him, Matt, creeping into our bedroom. No shirt, just sweatpants. He didn't knock, he didn't hesitate. He just walked in. Seconds later, Emily appeared in frame, wearing my t-shirt. She smiled at him. That smile, God, I'll never forget it. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't guilty. It was familiar. Like it had happened before. Like this was their routine. She reached for him. The rest played out like slow death. They kissed. She pulled him onto the bed, my bed, the same mattress I had laid on with her for 4 years, the same sheets we bought together. And then they disappeared under the covers, leaving behind nothing but silence and betrayal. I paused the footage, stared at the frozen frame for a long time. There it was, undeniable. My brother was sleeping with my wife, and now I had proof. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there, staring at the paused frame on my laptop, like I was looking at a still from a movie that couldn't possibly be my life. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I felt numb, cold, detached. Then it hit me all at once, like a brick to the chest. My breath came out in short gasps. My hands curled into fists. I slammed the laptop shut and nearly hurled it across the room, but stopped myself. That laptop now held the truth. My truth. My pain. My proof. I'd always imagined betrayal as something loud, explosive, like in the movies, screaming matches, slammed doors, dramatic exits, but in reality it was quiet, paralyzing. It was watching your entire world collapse in complete silence, while you sat frozen in the center of the rubble. I didn't confront them that day. I didn't scream or flip the kitchen table or demand answers. Instead, I cleaned the dishes, took out the trash, fed the dog, went through the motions like I hadn't just watched the two people I loved most destroy me from the inside out, because I needed time. I needed to think. Confrontation without control is just chaos, and if I was going to face them, I wanted to do it on my terms, not theirs. That night, Emily came home and kissed me on the cheek like nothing had happened. Asked if I wanted Thai or pizza for dinner. I stared at her face, so calm, so casual, and wondered how many times she'd lied to me with that same gentle tone. How many times she looked me in the eye, knowing she was sneaking around with my own brother behind my back. I said I wasn't hungry. She shrugged, ordered food for herself, and spent the rest of the evening watching a movie with Matt in the living room. I stayed in the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the same spot where they had laid together just the night before. The sheets were clean. Emily must have washed them, covered her tracks. But the stain wasn't on the fabric. It was in my chest, deep and burning. That night I didn't sleep. I listened to them laugh softly through the walls, heard the clinking of their glasses, her voice rising and falling with that little flirtatious edge I used to think was reserved just for me. I pictured Matt smirking like he always did when he got away with something. I pictured Emily biting her lip the way she used to when she wanted me, now using that same look on my brother. My stomach churned, not just with heartbreak, but with rage, confusion, humiliation. I had opened my home to him. I had trusted her with my heart, and now I was just the fool sitting in the next room while they toasted to my ignorance. But they wouldn't be smiling for long, because I wasn't going to stay quiet forever. The next morning, I looked at both of them like strangers. Matt was at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee like it was just another Tuesday, shirtless, tattoos on full display, his usual cocky posture practically radiating smug comfort. Emily was across from him, still in her robe, hair damp from a shower. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Morning," she said, smiling faintly. I could still see the lipstick smudge on the coffee mug. "Morning," I replied. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. They chatted about some Netflix show they had started, one I hadn't even heard of. They laughed about a scene from the episode, and I realized it must have been something they'd watched together when I was out or asleep. Another private moment I wasn't part of, another thread tying them together. I sat at the table and stared at my hands. I didn't know how I was holding myself together. I wanted to scream, to break something, to shove Matt's smirk back down his throat, but I kept my face still, my voice even, because I wasn't ready yet. I needed more than just one video. I needed time, a plan. I wanted the full picture, not just for myself, but so there'd be no way they could lie, twist, deny. I started listening, closely, watching their patterns, their habits, their tells. That day, Matt left around noon, claimed he was going to the gym. I watched from the upstairs window as he drove off, and then followed him. I took my old pickup. Emily hated riding in it, so neither of them paid it much attention. I tailed him from a few car lengths back. He didn't go to the gym. He went to a small motel on the edge of town. He didn't stay long, maybe 30 minutes. When he came back out, he looked relaxed. Too relaxed. I snapped a photo of his truck parked outside and left before he saw me. I didn't need to know what he was doing in that motel. I already knew. Later that evening, Emily claimed she had a girls' night planned, wine and gossip with her old coworker Claire. She even pulled out a dress she hadn't worn in months. I asked casually where they were meeting. She said Claire's place. I texted Claire an hour later. Just a simple, "Hey, hope you and Em are having fun tonight." Claire replied 5 minutes later, "Huh? I haven't seen Emily in weeks." And just like that, another layer of the lie peeled away. When Emily came home after midnight, I was waiting on the couch, pretending to be half asleep. She kissed me on the forehead, smelling like cheap cologne that didn't belong to me. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes glassy. "Did you have fun?" I asked. She nodded quickly, avoiding eye contact. "Yeah, just girl stuff." I smiled. "Glad you enjoyed it." He didn't notice the phone in my hand. Didn't see the photo from the motel I'd just sent to myself. Didn't notice how my fingers were digging into the armrest, leaving little crescent marks in the fabric. They thought I was blind, but now I was wide awake. By the time the weekend rolled around, I had stopped looking at my house as a home. It was a stage now. Every room had played a part in their lie. The kitchen, where they shared meals without me. The couch, where they watched movies, shoulder to shoulder. The hallway, where their eyes met just a little too long when they passed each other. And the bedroom. God, the bedroom. I started sleeping in the guest room. Not that either of them questioned it. I said I was dealing with back pain, and Emily barely blinked. That hurt worse than any truth. She didn't ask when I'd come back to bed, didn't press for a kiss goodnight. It was like she was relieved. I think Matt noticed, though. He tried to play it cool, still cracking jokes, still acting like my younger brother who just needed help getting back on his feet. But every time our eyes met, something shifted in the air, like we both knew the game we were playing, but were too stubborn to be the first one to move. I kept collecting pieces. Another recording, this time in the living room. He kissed her neck, back while she leaned against the kitchen counter. It was quick, almost clumsy. They thought I wasn't home. I wasn't supposed to be, but I was parked down the street, watching the live feed on my phone. I recorded every second, and I still didn't confront them. Why? Because I wanted to know how deep it went. Was it just sex? Just opportunity? Or was this something else, something worse? Because if she loved him, if he loved her, that would change everything. One afternoon, I came home early and caught a glimpse of Emily standing in the backyard with Matt. They were laughing. She had her hand on his chest. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. It looked intimate, soft, familiar. That's when it hit me. They didn't look like people sneaking around. They looked like people in love. And that was the real betrayal. Sex is one thing. Lust is primal, messy, even forgivable in the most twisted sense. But love, emotional intimacy, that's what takes a knife and twists it in slow motion. I sat in my truck for hours that night, staring at the dashboard, wondering if I was more heartbroken or furious. I had given my brother shelter when he had nowhere else to go. I had defended Emily every time someone questioned her coldness. I had trusted them, and they had made a fool of me under my own roof. That's when the rage started to take shape. Not reckless rage, not screaming in the street anger. No, this was quiet, calculated, controlled. The kind of rage that waits patiently in the corner of a dark room, sharpening its teeth. They thought I didn't know. They thought they were winning. But I was done collecting evidence. It was time to prepare for the fallout. They say knowledge is power, but no one tells you what to do with that power once you have it, once you're sitting on a ticking time bomb made of lies and betrayal, and all you can hear is the faint hiss of the fuse burning down while everyone else laughs around the dinner table. That weekend, I cooked breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, the whole thing. Emily blinked at me in surprise when she walked into the kitchen. Matt followed close behind, yawning, shirtless as always. It made my skin crawl now to see him move so casually through my space, like he owned it. "Wow," Emily said with a smile. "You're up early." I grinned. Felt like doing something nice for both of you. Matt clapped me on the shoulder. "Damn, man, you're spoiling us." "Spoiling you? If only you knew." We sat down together, me, my wife, and my backstabbing brother, and ate breakfast like nothing was wrong. They made small talk. Emily mentioned something about needing new curtains. Matt talked about maybe getting a dog. I watched them like a director watching actors hit their marks. Every glance between them was a silent line. Every pause in conversation was heavy with subtext. They didn't know I was watching the real movie behind the script. I had already backed up the footage to multiple drives. One in my safe, one at my office, one in the cloud under a fake email. I wasn't going to lose what I had gathered. I wasn't going to let them manipulate the story when it came out. But I wasn't ready to drop the bomb yet. No, this moment, this fragile, silent breakfast, was the final rehearsal before the curtains came down. After we ate, Emily left to run errands. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and disappear around the corner. 10 minutes later, Matt came into the garage where I was pretending to organize tools. "Hey," he said, "you good?" I turned to face him. "Yeah, why?" He shrugged. "I don't know. You've just seemed off, distant." I forced a smile. Just tired. Work's been rough. He nodded, but I could see a flicker of something in his eyes. Paranoia. Or maybe guilt. Or maybe he just sensed the shift in energy and didn't know what to call it. We stood there for a moment in awkward silence, surrounded by the tools I used to fix broken things. I wondered which one I'd use if I ever stopped holding myself back. "Don't worry about me," I said. "Everything's fine." It was a lie, of course, but at that point, lies were the common language in our home. The real difference? Mine were the kind you told before making a move. Theirs were the kind you told to survive the moment, and the moment was almost over. I wasn't just preparing for confrontation. I was preparing for exposure. The truth would land like a grenade, and I'd be the one pulling the pin. I carried the footage with me everywhere now. Not physically, but in my head. I could see every second of it as clearly as if it had just happened. Matt's bare back, Emily's fingers gripping the sheets, the way she whispered his name like it belonged to her now. Those images lived behind my eyelids. I didn't need to rewatch them. I couldn't. Once was enough. But I kept the files close, on my phone, in a hidden album, locked with a password only I knew. A backup flash drive stayed in the glove box of my truck, just in case. Part of me felt insane. The other part felt prepared. Every conversation after that was a performance. Every smile, every "I love you," every "what's for dinner." A script we all pretended was still real. They were getting sloppy, though. Maybe they thought I had accepted the distance. Maybe they thought the silence was surrender. Or maybe, worst of all, they didn't even care anymore. Emily started dressing up more often. Not for me, for errands, brunch with coworkers, yoga. Matt started coming home late without explanation. He never used to bother hiding where he went, but now he avoided my eyes when he walked through the door, muttering something vague about grabbing drinks or meeting a guy about freelance work. It was insulting how bad they were at lying, as if I hadn't spent the last month watching them make a mockery of everything I believed in. I stopped talking to friends, turned down invites. I couldn't pretend to be normal in front of people who knew me too well. One of my coworkers pulled me aside at the office and asked if everything was okay. "You look exhausted, man," he said. I smiled and told him everything was fine, because the truth was too much, too ugly, too real. And I wasn't ready to let the world in. Not yet. Instead, I started writing everything down. Times, places, conversations, every suspicious text, every lie I caught in real time. I built a timeline of betrayal like it was a case file. Because if I ever lost my grip, if I ever needed to explain why I burned everything down, I wanted there to be no doubt. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted clarity. I wanted them to look at me and know that I knew that every fake smile they gave me was one I let them wear, just long enough for the trap to snap shut. I even began drafting the message I would send when the time came, to her family, to mine, to our friends, to anyone who thought we were the perfect couple. It started with one sentence. My wife and my brother have been sleeping together, under my roof. I stared at that line for hours. It was honest, brutal, clean. It felt like holding a loaded weapon, and soon I'd be ready to fire. There's a strange kind of power in pretending you don't know the truth. You get to study people, really study them while they think they're still in control. You catch every flinch, every avoidant glance, every panicked pause when you ask a simple question like, "What did you do today?" It's like watching actors forget their lines mid-performance. Emily was unraveling. She tried to act normal, but it was clear she was nervous around me now. Her affection felt forced, her voice too sweet, her eyes too watchful. She started doing small things to buy back my trust, leaving little notes in my lunchbox again like she used to, sending me memes, making my favorite dinner twice in 1 week. If this had happened a month earlier, I might have believed her. But now? Now I knew she was just patching holes in a ship that was already halfway underwater. Matt, on the other hand, didn't even bother pretending anymore. He was cocky, overconfident, like he thought I'd never find out, or that I wouldn't have the guts to do anything if I did. He even started walking around the house like he owned the place, left his stuff wherever he wanted, took long showers, sat in my spot on the couch like it was his now. It was disgusting, but also revealing, because it meant he was getting comfortable, and people make mistakes when they get comfortable. That week, I set up one last hidden camera in the laundry room, not because I expected anything to happen there, but because the house had become a battlefield, and I wanted eyes on every corner of it. 2 days later, I caught them kissing in there. They didn't even try to hide it. He leaned in while she was folding towels. She smiled and whispered something, then laughed when he grabbed her waist. That laugh, it wasn't nervous or guilty. It was familiar, like she used to laugh with me. I copied the footage to my laptop, sat back, and took a deep breath. No shaking, no rage. Just a cold, eerie calm spreading through me like ice in my bloodstream. This was it, the final piece, the last nail in the coffin. Now all that was left was the delivery. That night, I uploaded everything to a private drive, videos, screenshots, text logs, timestamps. I made a clean, polished presentation of their betrayal. No commentary, no slander, just the facts. Then I scheduled the emails to Emily, to Matt, to my parents, to hers, to our closest friends, to our pastor, to Claire, her alibi from girls' night. I attached one line at the top of every message. I thought you all deserved to know the truth. Send time? Sunday, 9 a.m. Exactly 1 week from that night. I didn't want to explode in a fit of anger. I wanted to detonate everything in silence, clean, surgical, and undeniable, and I wanted them to watch it burn while I stood outside the flames with nothing left to lose. Once I scheduled the emails, the clock started ticking. 7 days. 7 days of pretending. 7 days of smiling through clenched teeth. 7 days of watching them lie to my face, knowing every word was building toward the implosion they never saw coming. I didn't sleep much that week, not because of guilt. No, that part was long gone. It was anticipation. Like the night before a storm you've been tracking for months. You know it's coming. You know what it'll do. You just sit there, bracing for the wind to rip the roof off. Emily was trying harder than ever. She kissed me goodbye in the mornings, made plans for the weekend, even suggested we reconnect with a little getaway, just the two of us. I nodded, told her it sounded great, that I'd look into flights. She looked so hopeful when I said it, like maybe she thought we could fix this. Like maybe she thought all her secrets could be buried if she smiled hard enough and played the part of the doting wife just long enough to reset everything. But this wasn't a rough patch. It was a death sentence. Matt barely spoke to me that week. Maybe he sensed something. Maybe he was just bored with the game now that he thought he'd won. He spent most of his time at the gym or in the garage, but at night I could still hear the creak of the hallway floorboards when he snuck into her room. My room. I stopped turning on the cameras. I didn't need to see it anymore. I already had what I needed. On Thursday, I went out for a beer with an old friend from high school, someone outside the web of lies. Someone who didn't know anything about Emily or Matt. I told him I just needed a night out, a distraction. He bought the first round, and for a few hours I felt like a real person again. When I came home, Emily was already in bed. I stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. Her face looked peaceful, like she didn't have the weight of an affair on her soul, like she still believed in the illusion we'd built together. I almost said something, almost whispered, "I know." But I didn't, because I didn't want a confession. I wanted consequences. Friday passed like molasses. Matt left for most of the day. Emily worked from home, humming while she typed on her laptop, her hair tied up, wearing my college sweatshirt like it still meant something. She made us dinner, lasagna, my favorite, and poured me a glass of wine. I ate every bite. She didn't know it was a funeral. Saturday morning I went for a long drive. No destination, just miles and miles of open road and the hum of the engine. I rolled the windows down, let the wind wash over me. It was the calm before everything changed. When I came back, the house was quiet, too quiet. Emily was in the shower. Matt wasn't home. I walked into my office, sat at my desk, and opened my laptop. I checked the schedule. Sunday, 9 a.m. All messages queued, all files uploaded, all truths polished like glass. 24 hours left. One final night in the life they ruined. And then, the reckoning. I didn't sleep the night before, not because of nerves, not because I was having second thoughts, but because my body simply wouldn't allow rest while something so final was hanging in the air. I lay in the dark, watching the red digits of the clock on my nightstand tick forward, 1 minute at a time. 6:42, 7:03, 7:49, 8:12. At 8:30, I got up and made coffee. The smell of it filled the kitchen, familiar and sharp. I didn't say a word when Emily wandered in, wearing that same sweatshirt of mine again. She smiled, kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted eggs. I said no. She shrugged and grabbed a banana. Matt stumbled in 15 minutes later, hair a mess, shirtless again. He gave me a lazy nod, then grabbed the last cinnamon roll like it was his God-given right. I sat at the table and watched them, my wife and my brother, move through the kitchen like nothing was wrong. It was almost impressive how casual they'd become. I checked the time. 8:58. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch. The tension was invisible, but I could feel it thrum under my skin like static. They didn't notice. 8:59. Emily leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. Matt was texting someone. Probably her. Probably making plans for when I left for work. And then, 9 o'clock. Nothing happened, of course. Not right away. They say truth sets you free. What they don't say is how hard it hits when it lands. I watched Emily flinch first. Her phone buzzed twice. She unlocked it, expecting something casual. Her face went pale. She stared at the screen like it had just punched her in the stomach. Then Matt's phone buzzed. He checked it, brow furrowing. Then his entire body stiffened. Emily looked at him. He looked at me. I didn't move, didn't blink. I just took another sip of coffee. Matt spoke first. "What the F is this?" His voice cracked, barely masked panic. Emily's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her phone slipped slightly in her hand. She looked up at me, like I was a stranger, like she didn't recognize the man calmly sipping black coffee while her world imploded. I stood, slowly, walked to the kitchen counter, set my mug down, looked both of them in the eye. "It's the truth," I said. Neither of them moved. "You've been lying to me for months. In my house, in my bed, behind my back." My voice was calm, level, cold. Emily's lip trembled. I don't, I snapped, sharper than I meant to. "Don't insult me with more lies." Matt stepped forward. "You didn't mean, I cut in. "You didn't mean to screw my wife under my roof while I was working 2 jobs and keeping food in the fridge for both of you?" His face twisted, maybe in shame, maybe just because the mask finally broke. Emily sat down slowly, her face white as paper. "You sent it to everyone?" I nodded. "To your parents?" she whispered. "To your parents, to mine, to our friends, to everyone who ever believed the fake life you tried to sell." Matt looked like he might throw up. "Good." I walked toward the door, grabbing my keys and wallet without looking back. "Where are you going?" Emily asked, her voice barely audible. I paused at the threshold. "Out," I said. "Somewhere with oxygen." And then I left. Not because I was done, but because I was just getting started. I didn't go far, just drove to the park a few blocks away, parked beneath an old oak tree, and sat there watching the world continue like it hadn't just ended. Kids played on the swings, a couple jogged past me, smiling, headphones in. Somewhere nearby, someone was grilling. The world didn't stop, but for them it did. At 9:07 a.m., my phone started buzzing. First it was Emily, then Matt, then Emily again. I didn't answer. I didn't even read the messages at first, just let them pile up like debris from an explosion. I sat with the silence, breathing it in, letting it settle. At 9:23, my mom called. That one I answered. Her voice was shaking. "Tell me this isn't real." "It's real," I said, flat. There was a long pause, then softly, "Oh, my God." I could hear the pain in her voice, pain not just for me, but for what Matt had done. She didn't defend him, didn't offer excuses, just sat there on the other end of the line, breathing heavily like she'd been punched in the gut. He said it was a mistake," she finally whispered. I laughed, bitter and short. "Yeah, well, it was a consistent one." We didn't say much else after that. She told me she loved me, that she was sorry. I said thank you. Then we hung up. I finally checked Emily's texts around 10. "Please come home. Can we talk? I didn't mean to hurt you. You're blowing up our lives over a mistake. You're being cruel." Cruel. I stared at that word for a long time, like she genuinely believed I was the one who crossed the line, that somehow exposing the truth was worse than living the lie. Matt's texts were shorter, sloppier. "You could have handled this differently. We didn't mean to hurt you. Bro, talk to me. This was messed up, man." Bro. He still had the nerve to call me that. By the time I got back to the house, Emily was sitting on the porch, face blotchy, makeup smeared. She stood up when she saw me, but I didn't stop walking. "I need to explain," she started. "No," I said. "You don't. I love you," she said, voice cracking. I laughed again, hollow. "No, you don't. You loved having me. There's a difference." Matt wasn't home. His car was gone. Probably ran to my parents' or some cheap motel to hide. Good. Let him sit in the mess he made. Emily tried to follow me inside. I turned. "You're not coming back in." Her face fell. "You're kicking me out? You cheated, lied, slept with my brother while I was in the next room. You don't get to cry on the porch and expect a hug." She didn't argue, just stood there as I walked inside and shut the door behind me. I didn't lock it out of cruelty. I locked it because finally I realized it had been wide open far too long. The first thing I did was strip the bed, not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I couldn't stand the idea of sleeping on the same sheets they'd used while stabbing me in the back. Every pillow, every blanket, into a trash bag. I threw it all out like it was infected. Then I opened the windows. The house smelled like them, like her perfume and his cologne and whatever awful scent betrayal left behind. I let the summer air pour in, fresh and honest. I walked through every room, picking up the fragments of their life together that I had been too blind to notice. A hoodie of Matt's draped over the couch, Emily's second toothbrush in the guest bathroom, probably so she could pretend she was just staying in there sometimes. A pair of his sneakers under the bed. All of it went in the trash. I wasn't cleaning for comfort. I was purging. Halfway through the kitchen, I stopped at the coffee maker, the same one I'd used every morning while they played house behind my back. I stared at it, then yanked the cord out of the wall and dumped the whole thing in the garbage bin. One less reminder. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I was beyond that now. What I felt was clarity. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about reclaiming what was mine. My home, my sanity, my sense of self. For too long I had twisted myself into knots trying to hold together something that had already rotted from the inside. Let them rot elsewhere. Around noon, I got a call from Emily's mom. She was in tears, apologizing, rambling. "I didn't raise her to be this kind of person," she said. "I know," I replied. "That's the sad part." She begged me not to tell her father. I told her it was too late. The messages kept coming. Friends, co-workers, even distant relatives who'd gotten a second-hand version of the story and wanted to know what really happened. I didn't respond to most. I didn't need to. The truth was out there now, breathing on its own. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was the one suffocating. By evening, Emily had packed up most of her things. She texted me asking if she could come by to get the rest. I told her to leave a list. I'd box it up and leave it on the porch. I didn't want to see her again. Matt didn't message me at all that day, coward. But I knew I'd hear from him eventually. He wasn't the type to stay silent forever. He needed attention, needed to feel in control. The moment he realized he wasn't, he'd come crawling back, with excuses and apologies and justifications. Let him. I'd be ready. That night, I sat alone in the living room. The house was too quiet, but it was mine again. I ordered a pizza, put on a movie I hadn't watched since before things fell apart, and stretched out on the couch with a blanket that didn't smell like anyone but me. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. It wasn't over, but the poison was gone. Now it was time to rebuild. On my terms. Matt showed up 2 days later. I heard the knock on the door before I saw his face through the window. Part of me expected him to come eventually. What I didn't expect was how calm I felt when it happened. I opened the door but didn't say a word. He looked like hell, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, wearing the same hoodie I'd thrown in the trash, like he dug it back out just to make a point. He shifted awkwardly on the porch, hands buried deep in his pockets. I need to talk, he said. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. You've got 5 minutes. He flinched at that, like he was hoping for more, like we were still brothers and time was something I owed him. He cleared his throat. I messed up. I said nothing. I didn't plan for any of this to happen, man. I was in a bad place. The divorce, the drinking. I was crashing. She was there. You slept with my wife, I interrupted. You can stop trying to soften it. His mouth clamped shut. His eyes dropped to the floor like a scolded child. I know, he muttered. I just thought maybe we could talk. Maybe you could hear me out. Hear what out? I asked, stepping closer. You want to explain how you betrayed me while eating my food, living under my roof, and smiling in my face like nothing was happening? I didn't mean for it to go that far. I laughed, short and bitter. You went that far dozens of times. I've got the footage, remember? You weren't just crossing a line, you were sprinting past it. He winced. Emily said you'd moved on, he muttered. Emily doesn't know a damn thing about me anymore. That seemed to land. He looked up at me, eyes finally showing what I've been waiting to see. Shame. I didn't come here to fight, he said quietly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I nodded once. Good. Now say it to yourself every day for the rest of your life. I turned and walked back to the door. He didn't follow. Are we just done? He called out. I stopped, hand on the doorknob, then looked back at him. No, Matt, you're done. I'm just getting started. Then I went inside and closed the door. No yelling, no punches, no dramatic confrontation in the rain, just a man looking his brother in the eye and realizing that some damage isn't just permanent, it's deserved. That night I got another text from Emily. Did he come by? I ignored it. I wasn't interested in their drama anymore. Let them implode in private. I had better things to do. I made myself dinner, put on some music, and finally started cleaning out the guest room, his room. Everything he left behind went straight into boxes. I didn't burn it, I didn't smash anything, I just cleared it out like you clear out trash. That room would be something new now, a home office, maybe a library, something built by me for me. The past 2 months had stripped me bare. But I wasn't broken, I was rebuilding. And this time, the foundation wouldn't include either of them. Emily didn't give up. She texted, called, left voicemails, then started showing up to places where she knew I might be. The grocery store, the gym, even my favorite coffee spot. It was always the same routine. Tears in her eyes, voice trembling, acting like she was the victim of something I did to her. It was exhausting. The worst part wasn't even the begging. It was the familiarity. She knew how to look at me, how to stand just close enough to trigger the instincts I'd spent years building with her. The way she tilted her head, the way her voice cracked at just the right syllable, like she was trying to activate an old version of me. But that version? He was dead. One morning, she showed up at my work parking lot, standing beside my car like it was still hers to lean on. I just want to talk, she said when I walked up. You've got 2 minutes. Her eyes lit up, hopeful. "I miss you," she said. "I think about what we had every day. I know I hurt you, but you and I, we were real. You can't just erase that." I crossed my arms. "You already did." "I was lost," she whispered. "After everything with you and work and Matt being here, it was a mistake." "No, it was a choice, and you made it over and over again." She flinched. I leaned in slightly. "I'm not here to be your closure, Emily. I'm not a checkpoint you pass on your way to peace." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I never stopped loving you." I looked her straight in the face. "I did, and I meant it." She didn't follow me into the building. I think something in my tone finally clicked for her. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, watching me walk away like she was seeing a stranger. Because to her, maybe I was. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer and watched the sunset. The house was quiet. The air was still. I could hear the neighbors laughing in the yard next door, the smell of barbecue drifting across the fence. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Not revenge, not closure, not even an apology. Emily and Matt's stories weren't mine to carry anymore. I'd stopped checking their social media, stopped wondering if they were still seeing each other. It didn't matter. They could run off to Vegas or never speak again. I wasn't in that story anymore. Mine was just beginning. I started thinking about travel again, about applying for that job across the country I'd once dismissed as bad timing. I even called an old college buddy I hadn't spoken to in years just to reconnect. The world felt open again. Was I healed? Not yet, but I wasn't bleeding anymore. And sometimes that's more than enough. There was a time when I couldn't walk past a mirror without flinching. Not because I hated myself, but because I didn't recognize the person staring back. Betrayal does that. It warps you, distorts you, turns you into a shadow of who you were. You question your worth, your instincts, your memory. You start to wonder if the lies were always there or if you imagined everything just to make the pain more tolerable. But lately, I was starting to see myself again. I was hitting the gym again, not to escape, but to build. My appetite came back. I was sleeping through the night without jolting awake, gasping for air like I'd been drowning in dreams of her and him and that damn hallway creaking in the dark. There were still moments, ghost flickers, like when I walked into a room and half expected to hear Emily's voice, or when my phone buzzed and I instinctively thought it might be Matt. But they passed quicker now, less painful, more like echoes fading into silence. I was learning how to live with the scar. One afternoon, I went to a local thrift store to drop off a few old things, stuff that reminded me too much of the past. A framed photo of me and Emily from our first anniversary, a lamp Matt had helped me pick out, a dusty record player we never used but kept for the aesthetic. While I was there, I saw an old mirror leaned against the wall. The frame was cracked, the glass was a little fogged. It was nothing special, but I found myself staring into it for a long time. And then I bought it. I took it home, cleaned it up, and hung it in the hallway. It wasn't perfect, but neither was I. And maybe that was the point. That evening I got a letter in the mail. Not a text, not an email, a real handwritten letter from Matt. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It was short. Messy handwriting, rushed like he couldn't sit still while writing it. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I lost the only brother I had, and that's on me. I just wanted you to know that I'm leaving town, starting over somewhere else. You don't owe me anything. I just hope someday you find peace. Matt. I stared at the letter for a long time before folding it up and tossing it in the drawer. Not out of spite, just closure. He was gone. Emily had gone quiet, too. The text finally stopped. No more voicemails, no more drive-bys or emotional pop-ins, just silence. And for the first time it felt earned, like she finally accepted the consequences of the choices she made. The house was cleaner, calmer. I started painting the walls, different colors. Not because the old ones were bad, but because I needed the place to look the way I felt. New, different, mine. One night I stood in the hallway staring into that old mirror. The crack down the left side caught the light in a way that almost looked like a scar. I smiled. Not everything broken needs fixing. Some things just need to be seen clearly. They say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time just lets the wound scab over so you stop picking at it every day. The pain doesn't vanish. You just learn how to carry it without letting it crush you. It had been over a month since I last saw Emily or Matt. The silence, once sharp and echoing, now felt like music. I'd stopped waking up wondering what they were doing or if they regretted it. Because honestly, I didn't care anymore. That was the shift. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, just freedom. One afternoon, I bumped into someone I hadn't seen in years, Cameron, an old friend from college. We used to work together during summers, drink cheap beer by the lake, talk about how we'd own the world someday. Life happened. We lost touch. But there he was, in line behind me at a sandwich shop. We talked like no time had passed, and before I knew it, we were grabbing beers later that week, laughing about stupid college stories, catching up on careers, family, life. When he asked what happened with Emily, I gave him the short version. "No drama?" he asked. I smiled. "The drama already happened. I'm not carrying it with me anymore." He nodded like he understood. Turns out, he'd been through something similar. Not the brother sleeping with your wife kind of betrayal, but enough heartbreak to know what survival looks like. It felt good. Real. No pity, no judgment, just connection. That night, I thought about how much had changed in such a short time. A few months ago, I was drowning in denial, suffocating under the weight of other people's choices. Now I was finally living life on my own terms. I started making plans again. A hiking trip up north, a solo weekend by the coast, a photography class I always said I didn't have time for. I even looked into adopting a dog, something loyal, something honest, something that wouldn't lie to my face. The strange part? I didn't feel lonely. I thought I would. I thought losing a wife and a brother in the same week would shatter me. But it didn't. It stripped me. And sometimes, when everything's been taken from you, what's left is who you really are. I had scars, sure, but I also had space now. Room to rebuild, to dream, to choose who I let into my life from this point on. No more blind trust. No more looking the other way. No more second chances for people who burn the first one to ash. I was done letting pain shape me. From now on, I was shaping it. It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary, gray, quiet. I was walking through the park, earbuds in, coffee in hand, when I spotted her. Emily. She was sitting alone on a bench by the fountain, arms crossed tight like she was holding herself together. She hadn't seen me yet. I stopped walking. I could have turned around, walked away, and kept the peace I'd spent months rebuilding. But instead I walked up. She looked up, startled. Her eyes widened, then softened into something unreadable. "Hey," she said, like we were old friends. I stayed standing. "What do you want, Emily?" She hesitated. "I didn't plan this." "Sure." She gestured to the bench. "Will you sit?" "No." She blinked, but didn't argue. There was a pause, the kind that stretches too long and begs to be filled. "I heard you're doing better," she said. "Cameron told Dana, and, well, word gets around." "I am." Another silence. "You look good," she added, quieter. "Thanks." She sighed, then looked down at her hands. "I know you probably don't care, but Matt left town. Moved to Arizona. I haven't heard from him in weeks." I didn't flinch. "I'm not here to rehash anything," I said. "That story's over." "I know," she whispered, "but mine isn't." I finally sat on the far end of the bench. I don't know why, maybe for closure, maybe just for proof that I could. She looked older, tired, not physically, but in her spirit, like someone who'd been living in the wreckage without knowing how to clean it up. "I ruined everything," she said. "You didn't deserve that." I stayed silent. I wanted to believe what Matt and I had was different, that it wasn't just lust or revenge or desperation. But the truth is it was nothing, a distraction from what I was too scared to fix. "You didn't ruin everything," I finally said. "You just showed me what was already broken." She nodded slowly. "I miss who we were." "So do I admitted. "But I don't miss who we became." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No. I don't love you anymore either. And that's the hardest part, for both of us, I think." She looked away, and for a moment we just sat in silence, two strangers with a shared past. Then I stood up. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily." She didn't try to stop me, just looked up and whispered, "You already did, didn't you?" I nodded, and then I walked away. No dramatic goodbye, no promises, just a quiet ending to a conversation that had been echoing between us for far too long. Some things don't need fixing. Some things just need to be left. The house didn't creak the same way anymore. Maybe it was in my head, but everything felt lighter. The air, the silence, even the way sunlight fell across the floor in the mornings. It wasn't sharp or cold. It was warm, still, peaceful. I had finally settled into the quiet. Not the kind that comes after a storm, where everything's soaked and trembling, but the kind that grows when the noise is gone, and you're not afraid of the next crash. I had repainted the living room, got rid of the neutral beige Emily loved, and replaced it with a deep, calming green. The walls didn't echo anymore. They absorbed. They held me. There was no longer a spare toothbrush in the bathroom, no traces of Matt's old hoodie tucked into the back of the hallway closet, no scent of her perfume clinging to the corners of the bedroom. Just mine. One morning, I woke up to birds outside the window. Simple, uneventful. But it hit me. This was the first time I'd woken up not thinking about them, not dreaming about betrayal, not checking my phone out of habit or dread. Just waking up, existing. I took a walk that morning and passed a couple on the sidewalk. They were laughing, arms looped together like the world didn't exist beyond them. A few months ago, that sight would have gutted me. Now, it just made me smile. Not because I wanted it back, but because I no longer felt robbed. That's the thing about grief. It tricks you into believing you lost something perfect. That if you could just rewind, fix one small thing, everything would be whole again. But in reality, what you lost was already cracked, already bleeding. You just didn't want to see it. One evening, I had friends over, real ones, not mutual friends of me and Emily, just people who knew me, cared about me, showed up without hidden agendas or whispered questions about my brother. We drank beer, cooked burgers, played cards late into the night. Someone asked me if I was seeing anyone. I said no. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a door, one I wasn't rushing to open but knew was waiting for me if I ever felt like walking through it. Later, when I was alone again, I looked around the house. My house. It had changed. So had I. There were still scars beneath the surface, still old memories curled up in corners I hadn't fully dusted yet. But they didn't run the show anymore. They were just reminders of what I survived, of who I refused to become, and of the man I chose to be. I stood in front of the cracked mirror in my hallway, the same one I bought months ago from that dusty thrift store. Back then, I saw a man unraveling. Now, I saw someone I didn't just recognize, I respected. It was strange, realizing I didn't feel like a victim anymore. Not of Emily, not of Matt, not even of my own blind trust. I had been hurt, yes, but I didn't live in that hurt anymore. It no longer shaped the way I moved, spoke, or looked at the world. It simply was a chapter, not the whole book. I remembered the night I helped Matt move into my house after his divorce, the guilt on his face, the broken man who begged for a fresh start. At the time, I thought I was doing something noble, offering family a lifeline in the middle of a storm. Now I knew better. I wasn't being noble. I was being blind. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones holding the knife, and they don't stab you in the back. They wrap an arm around your shoulder first. I could still picture them together, even now. Her laugh, his grin, their shared secrets behind closed doors, while I sat downstairs, sipping coffee and wondering why the room felt colder. It used to haunt me. Now, it felt like someone else's life, because it was. They both became memories, no longer monsters. Their names didn't tighten my chest anymore. Their betrayal no longer dictated my choices. I had grieved, raged, cried, and then I built a new routine, a new space, a new sense of self, not out of spite, out of survival. I wasn't the same man who offered Matt my guest room. I wasn't the same husband who excused the way Emily pulled away night after night. That man needed to be loved so badly, he ignored the rot underneath the floorboards. But I saw it now, all of it, clear and sharp, and I was still standing. One evening I pulled out an old box from the closet, photos, cards, receipts from anniversaries that now felt like fiction. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just looked through them, quietly, and then placed the entire box outside for trash pickup. Letting go doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just a man standing at the curb at midnight, tossing away what no longer fits in his life. I went back inside, locked the door, exhaled, and when I passed the mirror again, I didn't look away. The seasons had changed. The summer heat faded into crisp fall air, and with it, so did the last traces of the man I used to be. I wasn't trying to forget the past anymore. I was just no longer tethered to it. One morning, I took a drive upstate. No destination, no agenda. Just open roads, music loud, windows down. I passed quiet towns and long stretches of golden trees. Somewhere along the way, I stopped at a lookout point. The view was nothing short of breathtaking. Endless hills, wind in the grass, clouds dragging shadows across the land like brushstrokes. And I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because I was free. No bitterness, no weight on my shoulders, no unanswered questions gnawing at the edges of my mind. Just peace. The kind you earn, not stumble into. I pulled out my phone and took a photo, not to post, not to send, just for me. A timestamp of healing. On the drive back, I realized something. The pain hadn't made me stronger. I made me stronger. Choosing to stand up every day. Choosing to rebuild. Choosing not to let their betrayal define my future. Emily and Matt were gone, out of my life, out of my story, and I didn't need an apology. Didn't need them to feel the depth of what they'd done. That wasn't my burden anymore. That was theirs. I arrived home just before sunset. The house smelled like fresh coffee and wood polish. My house. My peace. I fed the dog. Yeah, I finally got one. A rescue mutt named Chance, with a goofy smile and no understanding of personal space. He followed me everywhere, like he knew I'd needed loyalty in its purest form, and he gave it freely. I sat on the back porch with a beer in one hand, his head resting on my foot, the sky bleeding orange above us. For a long time, I thought the worst part of betrayal was the moment you find out, the texts, the lies, the names. But now I knew the truth. The worst part is what it takes from you. The doubt, the loss of faith, the urge to shut every door and never trust again. But the best part? That you get to choose what you rebuild, who you become after. And I chose this. Not rage, not revenge, just a quiet life built on honesty and intention. I stood, stretched, and looked at the sky one last time. The sun was setting, yeah, but I knew the light would come back tomorrow, and this time it would be shining on a man who knew exactly who he was.